Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and sunny greetings from the MySpeaker headquarters here in Finland. Welcome to the Global Impact Seminar. It's such a pleasure to have you here. This morning, we'll be hearing from 3 different speakers who will all introduce their hot takes on how you can become more impactful at work. To start off with, I would like to introduce you to our first speaker. He is the leading authority on how to achieve the mindset behind big, bold goals through leadership and teamwork. Please help me in warmly welcoming Caspar Craven.
Hello, I'm thrilled to be here with the Global Impact Seminar with my speaker, talking to you today about motivating your team on how to achieve big, bold goals. And specifically, what I'm fascinated in is those small human shifts that can change everything. Those small human behavior shifts that are accessible to anyone. So over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to be sharing some ideas, some thoughts, and a specific activity, specific exercise for you to do afterwards. Because I always think with ideas, it's all about what do you do with them. It's not enough just to hear an idea. It's about doing something that generates some action with that. Look, my obsession in life is this question here. What makes it possible to achieve big, bold goals? Those things that everyone says it's impossible. There's no way you can go and do that. And I think that the mindset to be able to do this is more important than ever today, when in our businesses, in our home lives, we face challenges from so many different directions. And I truly believe, as you'll find out in these stories that I'm going to share shortly, that this is one of the most important skill sets that I think we need to master, not just for ourselves, but for our employees and for our teams across all of our businesses, and also in our teams at home as well. So for me, it's about sharing these ideas to motivate your team so that you can go on that journey together. So that's what we're going to explore. Why listen to me? Who am I? What have I got to share? And what's my background to share these ideas? Very briefly, I started off in life as a fisherman. That's me in the red shirt over there. I then trained as a chartered accountant in London, and then ended up as a director at KPMG's investment banking team. That was my entry to the world of working. I've also since then built and sold a data analytics company. That's the company there on the screen. I've been a CFO at a company which we grew and sell to private equity. But perhaps more interestingly than that, and the source of a lot of inspiration and ideas that I draw on is I've sailed twice around the world. The first time was on what was called the world's toughest yacht race. A yacht race where there were 12 identically matched boats, 18 crew on each boat, and the only thing that made a difference between first place and last place was how you work together as a team. How do you come together? And for me, that was a fascinating insight. The whole mantra behind that race was ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and that's literally what we lived for 10 months, racing around the world. In that particular picture there, you can see our boat, the orange boat, as we led the fleet coming out of Cape Town, that very recognizable Table Mountain in the background. So that was the first part of starting to shape some experiences around big, bold goals. Then in 2014, I sailed around the world a second time. This time with this team you can see on the screen here, my wife and our 3 children under the age of 10. And it was a very transformational experience for me in terms of showing me the really powerful parallels between work life and home life, and how do you take a team on what seems like an impossible journey. For that journey, it didn't happen overnight. It took us 5 years to prepare for that, and then 2 years actually going around the world. But it laid bare for me so many of these principles that I think we need to be applying in business today about how to think differently about the challenges that we're facing. Since coming back from that last adventure 7 years ago, I've written a number of books. I've done a lot of research. I spent a lot of time traveling around the world, speaking, interviewing, and learning from some of the most successful leaders on our planet. Success, of course, leaves clues, and some of these clues, these insights that I've digested into these different books here. So we'll be talking a little bit about my latest book, The Big Bold Mindset, and the frameworks that come out of that. Alongside that, I continue to do a lot of research. Every 2 weeks we publish. We're writing the next book in plain sight. So every 2 weeks we publish our newsletter, the latest research, the latest findings. And alongside that, I'm actually continuing to innovate and work with some incredible teams, with the team here at Pathogen Reduction Systems, where we are tackling one part of climate change. How do we reduce the energy usage in buildings? And in another startup, we're tackling an aspect of mental health. So again, the theme here is big, bold thinking, big, bold mindset, taking teams on the journey. I'm not just a practitioner. I've done this. I'm a serious student of this. And so I'm approaching this from many, many different angles. So I just wanted to share that so you know where I'm coming from. So why do we need a different mindset? Why should we think differently? Why do we need to take our teams on this journey? Let's start with a McKinsey quote where they said the pace of change will never be this slow again. Look, we can all see this around us, right? We can see the impact of AI. We can see the amount of change that's coming through in the world. And for me, this is an unprecedented level of change. And you will inevitably see this in your businesses, the amount of disruption, the amount of change. And for me, it's all about how do we need to navigate that new world. Let me share a story which for me underlines why I think we need to think differently. And the story comes from the second time going around the world. And we're going past this small group of islands just in there in that red circle. They're called the San Blas Islands, which are just outside Panama. And as we're sailing around there, what I noticed that lots of ships had run aground, big ships, small ships. And I'm a curious person. And I was looking at this saying, what's happening here? What's going on? So I started researching, I started digging around, and I found that the charts that everybody was navigating this area with were last created by Captain Cook several hundred years ago. And of course, coral reefs change, they move over time. And so basically the charts didn't match the reality of where we are today. I think it's the same in business, that you can't navigate a new world using an old set of charts. And so many of our mental models were created 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And I think if we're navigating this new world using those old set of charts, I think we run a very real risk of running our businesses aground, much like those ships that you saw there. So for me, that's the driving force behind this reset with the big, bold mindset and being able to take your team on the journey with that. The research that I've done, the latest book that I've written, it distills down this rather complex picture. There's a set of 20 principles that sit behind this. Each of those principles, each of those little bubbles on there, but it distills down to 5 key themes here around thinking bigger, leading bigger, bigger together, the essence of teamwork, bigger by the day. This is all about self-leadership, and bigger resilience. What are you doing to develop your resilience levels? Because this stuff does not happen by accident. Or at least, the best stuff doesn't happen by accident. It's about being deliberate, specific, and conscious. So for me, these are the core elements of that. In our short time today, I just want to give you a little teaser, a little taste of some of these different ideas. So I'm going to focus on this whole idea of thinking bigger. Let me start off with a question. Why don't we think bigger? Why don't we really, be expansive and push out there? Perhaps it's because, we've tried and failed at different things before. And what happens when we fail quite often is we scale back the size of our ambition. We say, okay, let's go for a slightly smaller target. Last year we went for 20%, we didn't get it. So this year, maybe we'll go for 15% or 10%, and we scale back the size of that ambition. I think that's exactly counter to the way that we need to think. Because, I think what I've observed with leaders around the world, there's real magic when we think bigger and, we create those huge goals, because when we do that, we stretch what we believe is possible. And it's in that stretch that I think that we create the space for fresh thinking, fresh ideas, fresh creativity. And it's those exact things that I think are the essence to how we solve the problems that we face in our business today. And that's how we take our team on the journey to be able to solve those problems. How did I learn this? Let me share a story where I came from. So back in 2009, I was building a data analytics company. Craven was the business I mentioned before. And back then, we'd had sales of about €500,000, but we weren't doing very well. We were losing money. I was working 16 to 18 hours a day. I barely saw my wife, barely saw my kids. Life was pretty uncomfortable. That's understating it. It was very, very tough. Perhaps like many organizations, many leaders, they're facing a lot of different challenges right now. And I remember sitting down there back then thinking, okay, well, we can live the reality we're in today, or we can create a fundamentally different story, which is anchored out in the future rather than anchored in where we are. today. I started at home. This is my wife, Nicola, and we decided to completely rewrite the story of our family life. And rather than just sort of saying, okay, well, we do this from year to year to year, we started to imagine, we go out 5 years and say, okay, what does the story of our life look like? And literally sitting around our kitchen table that you can see on the screen there, we scripted out that different story. And we even wrote a vision statement, a story of what our future was going to look like. And that for us was the starting point. And it's really interesting because I studied a couple of years ago at Cambridge University under Professor Kamal Munir, who talks about digital disruption. And he espouses exactly the same process that I'm about to share with you, which is all about this notion of big, bold thinking, of going out there 5 years into the future, looking at the patterns, the trends, the changes, the ecosystem, and saying, what does that look like out 5 years? And anchoring and orientating your business around that story there, rather than the traditional incremental thinking, which is certainly what I learned as an accountant, which is, how do we grow by 10% this year? How do we grow by 20%? And I think one of the key things to engaging a team is to say, okay, we all need to get very, very clear in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, what will we see, what will we hear, what will we feel? And it's about anchoring our business propositions about where we're going over there. It's interesting, if we'd applied incremental thinking to our sailing adventure, we would have worked all the way up to going on a 4-week sailing holiday around the Greek islands, rather than going on a 2-year transformational journey. That, for me, is the difference between incremental thinking and big, bold thinking. So I think this is something that needs to become the standard for all organizations about how do we go and do that. But, what happens when you typically come up with that big, bold story of the future? For me, these were the voices that came rushing into my head when we came up with that story. We didn't have the money. Nicola, my wife, she couldn't sail. She'd been on a boat twice. She'd been seasick both times. And on top of that, we didn't have a boat either. So there were lots and lots of good reasons why that never should have happened. When we came up with the story of turning our business around, we came up with the story we wanted to be the world's best data treasure hunters. We go inside big companies' data. We'd look for patterns. We'd look for stories. And we'd say, okay, how can we help them to make better decisions based on this information? And when we came up with this story and we came up with our dream client list of all the organizations we wanted to work with, the same thing, all the voices came rushing into our head. We can't do it because we haven't got enough clients, haven't got enough money, haven't got enough resources, haven't got enough people. Isn't it funny when we say haven't got enough of, we hypnotize ourselves to saying more of that. And for me, this is the starting place in the mindset. And this needs to travel right throughout an organization. And it's this enablement, this attitude of thinking differently about the future. So how do we get out of that? So for me, there's some really simple techniques. I always go back to this thing about it's finding those small human behavior shifts that make all the difference. And for me, it was a conversation. I think a lot of these different things in teams are about conversations. And it was highlighted by this piece of paper where we had a conversation where on one side, we said, why does this story matter? Why must we go and do this? And the other side was the why nots. I want to know every single reason why this idea will fail. I've heard this called pre-mortem in business. And it's looking at all those different things because, quite frankly, those things are going to become your to-do list. Quite often, I think, people walk away from those why nots. I think we need to walk towards them. For us, for our story, our why was that, for our sailing story, we wanted to create magical, life-changing experiences for us as a family. That was our driving force. We spent a lot of time getting really, really clear on that. Same thing in our business. Got really, really clear on why are we doing this. I used to ask everyone in the team, why are we here? Why do you care about what we're doing? What is it about this mission that resonates with you at that deep emotional level? Why are we driving towards this? I think that's such a powerful thing to do, such a powerful conversation that we can have with our teams to start to unlock that, to say, okay, where are we going together as a team? And on the other side, all those why nots. And, for our sailing adventure, there were many, many things, how do we buy a boat? How do we create the money? What happens if somebody gets sick? Many, many things. I liken these things to slaying dragons. You can only slay one dragon at a time. So it's coming up with all of those different things and saying, okay, which are the most important ones that we need to work through first? The power of this is creating that shared conversation. It's engaging the team with on this journey about this is where we're going, this is why it matters, this is what we have to overcome. What I notice is that so many people get stuck at this point here. It's this gap. It's like a microsecond where you come up with the why and you come up with all those why nots. And I typify it when you have those ideas for the future. It's like trying to light a fire. Anyone tried to light a fire? You're out there in the wilderness, out in the forest or something like that, and you've got the kindling, you've got some twigs, and you're trying to start it with a match. And perhaps it's a little bit damp and it's trying to start to get going. But you finally get that spark, that little flame, like that idea that's going off in your head. All too easy, isn't it? And we do this to ourselves. We pour the bucket of cold water over it. It could be you doing this, it could be other people that's doing this. So what's the difference between having the bucket of cold water poured all over it versus turning it into a roaring fire? Because I think this is what we need to do to be able to go on that journey together. Let me share some very practical things that I think are necessary to do this. The first thing is encouraging your team to be more curious, to ask questions, to think, well, why is this the way? What could we do differently with this? To sit with those ideas for longer. How many of you, quick test, how many of you have ever had an idea that you got really excited about? And by the end of the day, you've talked yourself out of that idea. Worse still, 6, 12 months later, you found that someone else has done your idea. They've done something with it and they've created something amazing with it. I think we dismiss those ideas far too quickly. And it's understandable, isn't it? Because, we've got busy lives. We've got stuff that fills 110%, 120% of our diary. And so actually creating the space for this stuff, I think is really, really important, to sit with those ideas for longer, write them down, make them real, put them up on the wall, explore them, imagine, play with them. A sense of play, I think, is really, really important. Just some very, very practical ways to make sure that you're engaging your team on that journey, being very open and sharing those challenges with your team. A story that I came across in my research for writing my last book. Jason Stockwood, an incredible CEO who built this business, Simply Business. He bought the business when it was at £10 million of value. He turned it into a £500 million business before selling it. All they did was insurance for small businesses. And they set their whole business up on the proposition of continuous experimentation, because we don't know exactly how we're going to get to that future place. We have to run a lot of experiments. And basically, he said, on average, we run 60 different experiments every single week. And for that requires a different way of thinking to be able to take on those challenges. Anyone could have ideas. Anyone could put ideas into the pot. And it's about saying, okay, how do we iterate towards the future? Lots and lots of other examples of businesses like that. But for me, it's that sense of play, that sense of curiosity, that sense of experimentation. I realize we're running tight on time here. So look, I'm going to give you a conversation starter to go and have with your team. Again, home team, work team, could be either one. I think that by the way, it's a really important thing, because I think the skills we need to thrive at home are exactly the same skills we need to thrive at work. So interestingly for me, I learned a lot of my skills at home, and then I took them back into the workplace once I'd honed and developed those skills. So go and have this conversation with somebody, again, home or at work, and have that why not conversation. Think about a goal that you're aiming at, and listen and explore with somebody else how they see things differently. Get that diversity of thoughts, struggle with those different ideas, talk about why this goal matters, and talk about the why not, all those things that you have to overcome. And the goal you're looking to get to is to build a shared picture of that why versus why not. We used to do this with our entire team. We're only a small team, right? We're a team of 15 people. But it was getting really clear, getting that engagement on the size of the challenge that we're trying to overcome. Because I find when you do that, that starts to spark ideas. Every single person in your team will have ideas on how you can get there. And the more you can engage them, the more motivated they will feel, the more they want to come on the journey with you. It's just one of the many conversations that I encourage people to have. So look, I'm going to pull things together here because of time. But if this is interest, I'd love to come and talk to your teams to dive deeper into this, into the many different conversations that we can have, either over the course of an hour-long talk, or half day or a full day workshop stroke program, where we dive into these conversations to ignite all that talent within your team. We just touched on one principle within that thinking bigger section, but of course there's all the other different areas as well. So look, I hope that's provided some thought-provoking ideas. I would love to continue the conversation. It's been fantastic to be part of this. Thank you, my speaker, for asking me to come and be involved in this. So go and play with that conversation. Let me know how you get on, and hopefully I will work with some of you in the future. All right, take care, everyone.
Thank you so much, Caspar. Such great insights on how to achieve big, bold goals, and especially on the mindset behind it. And now that we have the mindset and the first steps locked in place, it's easy to build on top of that. And to build on top of that, I would like to introduce our next speaker. She is one of the top futurists currently and one of the AI speakers. And she talks a lot about how AI will predict and help us build the future that we're all going towards. Please welcome Nikki Greenberg.
I believe we're living in the most exciting time in history. We're living in this world where we have advanced robotics, we have spatial computing like the metaverse, and of course we have AI, which is going to be a game changer. Now, people often ask, what is this AI era about? Is it really a fundamental shift, or is this simply a blip? And I love referring to them to the slide, because what it talks about here are the long ways of innovation. And if you look in 1990, what it shows is the start of the fifth wave. So this is when we got the internet, this is when we got the start of social media, the start of email. And we know how this really changed the way that we interact with the world and the way that we do everything. So then when you get to 2020, you can see that we're at the start of another fundamental shift. This is an era of AI, IoT, the Internet of Things, drones, robotics, etc. So that is to say that when you want to think about this AI era that we're in, it's kind of like where we were in the 1990s. It is a fundamental shift. So by way of introduction, my name is Nikki Greenberg. I am a futurist and a thought leader focused on the trends and technologies changing the world. Now, I started my career working as an architect and a real estate developer in Australia. And more recently, I was actually the head of technology strategy at an investment manager with 70 billion in assets under management. So that is to say, I am a practitioner. I understand the trends and technologies that are coming and the way that they can and should be applied to have a long-term vision of the future. So today I'm going to be talking to you about creating an AI organization of tomorrow today. So thank you very much to my speaker for inviting me here to speak to you all. It is an absolute privilege and an honor to have your attention. I'm going to be taking you on a journey of where we are in this AI landscape, and of course what you as an organization can and should be thinking about to implement AI today and to have a longer term strategy. So let's jump right into it. Now, I like to use the analogy of AI kind of being like an intern. When I started talking about AI back in 2022, I used to refer to it as kind of being like a toddler that was young and clumsy and, clever, but needed to be supervised. But since then, it has grown up. So I refer to AI as kind of being like an intern for a number of reasons. It's young, it can be overconfident. Yes, that is true. But we also need to make sure that we're nurturing it. We need to teach it. We need to supervise it. And the same way that you wouldn't just send your work out that was produced by an intern without actually checking it over, that's the same way we need to be treating AI. We need to understand that, yes, it's this incredible technology, but it's young and it's overconfident and it needs supervision and training. Now, this graph really explains incredibly well how AI is advancing at different tasks, like speech recognition, handwriting recognition, and so on and so forth. What you can see is that over time, AI has very quickly gotten very good at a lot of tasks, even to the extent that it has overtaken human capabilities. Now, It's usually around this time in my presentations that people start to get a little bit concerned and think, okay, well, if AI is very good at these tasks, then, well, what does that mean for me and what does that mean for my job? Now, there's a few different studies that talk to different impacts that AI is having in white-collar jobs and desk jobs, but I think this stat is a pretty good summary. There's essentially, in any person's job, there's probably about a 34% task automation opportunity. Now, what does this mean? It means that there's about a third of your job that can and should be automated. So about a third of your job that can and should be automated. What does that mean? It means that if you can identify tasks that are repetitive, dangerous, or dull, these are perfect for automation. Now, I'm no stranger to technology changing jobs. And what I found is that in my career as an architect, as technology changed, I changed with it. When I was at university, I used to have to do drafting by hand, and I'm not that old, but we'd have to quite literally use a drawing board. For the final 2 years of my career, we could do drafting on the computer. And eventually, by the time I graduated, it was all about 3D CAD BIM smart models. Fast forward to today, and you can see the disruptive impact that generative AI has had on even my profession as an architect. Just by moving objects around, you can see that it's given this dynamic, transformative, an incredibly fast way of designing a building. I mean, whether or not it can stand up, that's yet to be seen, but it's still quite a powerful tool. Another tool that we've actually become quite enamored with as we talk about generative AI is its ability to, in a sense, recreate humans, or as I like to call it, a mini me, a digital version of yourself. So this is actually a technology from Microsoft called VASA One, where simply all they did is put that photo in and they were able to make a video recording of this person quite elegantly. We've all fallen in love with using ChatGPT. I get the paid version, ChatGPT 4.0. Here I am just taking a simple document, throwing it in and seeing, okay, well, what can it do? Can it start summarizing this document? It was probably about a 40-page document. And you can see it's actually sorting through all of this information for me because AI is very good at repetitive, dull, and data-led tasks. And not to be forgotten, even in wonderful Sydney, Australia, you can see here's the Sydney Opera House. As an Australian, we're kind of obliged to always talk about our beautiful country. But even the Sydney Opera House is using different technologies like, computer vision to be able to do maintenance and construction on those beautiful, that beautiful, beautiful structure. So that kind of begs the question. We've got such fantastic technologies that are really out of this world when we talk about generative AI, and I've only given you just like the smallest little sample of what it can do. But the question kind of comes to us as organizational leaders, well, do we even need to be using this technology? What's the benefit? It costs a lot. We don't have budget to be doing new things. Like, why? Like, why should we even be looking at a new technology like generative AI? So here's the thing. A lot of industries are incredibly inefficient, and generative AI gives us opportunities to do things in a better way. And let's just look briefly at two industries. For one, in the US, 75 to 80% of government IT budget is spent on operating and maintaining outdated systems. Now imagine if that kind of budget could be reallocated to systems that actually make things better. So I say yes, you can find the budget. In construction, 91.5% of US projects go over budget or schedule or both. That means basically every single project, despite the great technology and the great talent that we have, we're still finding it hard to actually keep on budget and schedule. So, this ultimately equates to a $1.63 trillion potential saving globally via productivity improvements. So I say, well, if there is a better, faster, cheaper, easier way to do a task, why not do it? It's worth investing in using these new technologies available to us. So let me tell you a little story. So Alexander Graham Bell, He made the first telephone call in 1876, and he called up his assistant Watson. And he called him up and he said, Watson, this was the first phone call ever. He said, Watson, come over here. Now, I tell this story to illustrate something to you. And that is that often what happens is even though we have great new technologies, us as human beings, our habits don't always keep up. Because what he could have done when he called up his assistant Watson is he could have actually said to him, well, actually delivered his message over the phone instead of just saying, hey, come over here, which is what he was used to. So that is to say, for us in organizations, as we're looking at new technologies, our habits have to change to keep up with the tech. So I'm going to give you some quick wins and ways of getting started with AI. When I've referenced it previously, I was head of technology strategy at a large investment manager. And as part of my role there, I was having to help the organization get on board with digital transformation and adopting new technologies that would actually help us do a better job. Now, some of the quick wins, and I think we don't talk about quick wins enough. Quick wins are great because people actually see the reward for their investment in learning and changing and doing new things. So, one of the quickest and easiest ways to get started, and I apologize that it is so obvious, but it is very true, is that look at the technology that you're already using and try the new features. So much of our day-to-day technology is already using AI and it's already part of what you're paying for. When you get a little pop-up saying, hey, we've got a new feature or there's been an upgrade, look into it, try it out. Go and go and take an online class. YouTube has great little how-to guides, LinkedIn as well. Just look up, any task and how you can do it better. All the technology that we're using on a day-to-day basis is improving. So meet with your sales rep, extend what you have. You're already paying for it, so why not use it? So that's a great first place to start. A second place to really delve into is around tasks. And remember, I told you that tasks that are dull, dangerous, and repetitive are ideal for being automated. Take a look at those tasks, start mapping them, how can they be done better? You know, Test out different ways of doing it. And see, how can you start incorporating some automations into your day to day? An obvious one is just filing any kind of document that you receive from emails or, things going into folders. That it's such repetitive and dull work. That's the kind of thing you can automate and do quite quickly. It just takes a little bit of time investment to start identifying what you can do, but you'll enjoy that. You'll enjoy that payback. And then the third thing really is around guidance. And with new technologies like AI coming in, a lot of workplaces don't necessarily want to permit their teams to be able to use, ChatGPT or the equivalent because of, privacy concerns and other concerns. But the reality is that this technology is out there. So it's very important for organizations to, focus on cybersecurity, data integrations, knowing that people are going to be using this technology. So how can they do it in a way that is better and makes sense with your organization? And this little one-page guide, really keep it simple. It doesn't need to be the, all-encompassing, just so that people have a guide that when they're using technologies, that they know what they should be doing in a diligent way. So keep it simple, let it be a living document that's always updated, and get started right away. If you don't have any kind of an AI policy or AI strategy, you're going to get yourself in hot water. So a simple starter guide, one-page guide is a great place to start. Now, in the bigger picture, it's important to actually have a roadmap for where you want to go. So in terms of technology, I find it's very helpful to actually go out, look up new technologies to solve different tasks, to meet with vendors, to actually understand, to get a lay of the land and understand what's out there that you can start using. So very simple ways you can, go in onto a search engine, type in any task plus AI. So it might be budget management AI. You'll find so many different tools that can do this. So it's a great way to get started. Use that one-page guide that you've created, because that one-page guide that you've already created, that will be able to give you some guidance in those factors of cybersecurity, of data integration, your data naming, etc., so that you can actually assess what you're looking at quite quickly because you have that guidance. So we'll start, ruling out certain technologies that you can and can't use. And then finally, you want to test and learn. You've actually got to try this technology out. There should be a safe space that you can have pilot projects to be able to get things done and see if it is an improved in better way so that you can start learning from doing. So secondly, when it comes to tasks, you've already identified tasks that can be automated, those dull, repetitive, and dangerous tasks. Try them out, set up those automations, let it get smarter, let it be more autonomous with less supervision. Start handing your work over to the computer systems to do your work for you. Free up your time. It's the best thing you can do. Because remember, there's about a third of your day that can and should be automated. So take advantage of it, leverage it. And finally, what you do want to have is a comprehensive strategy as an organization. You've already started. You've already set up your one-page guide and refined it. You've already extended your existing technology. You've already gone out to see what other technologies are out there. You've already got some organizational knowledge of how this technology works for you, which gives you some background that you can start actually laying the groundwork for a more comprehensive guide. So, you've already started, leverage the learnings you have, create a roadmap for where you want to go, and always keep it simple. Nobody reads these 300-page documents. Keep it simple, and the simpler and the cleaner it is, the more that people will engage with it. So I'm going to leave you on a final thought. I know I've taken you on a little bit of a journey. It's been very pragmatic. I don't always do a very pragmatic keynote. A lot of the times I'm just talking about, flying cars and crazy things that are coming up in our world. But today I thought I'd give you something very pragmatic just because of how important AI is to organizations. But I do want to leave you with a final thought. And it's that organizations of the future are built today. So if you actually want to be future ready, if you want to be relevant and not just relevant, if you want to be a leader into the future, you as an organization do need to lay that groundwork today to be able to get there and get to your goals. So I would like to thank you ever so much for your time and attention. It's been an absolute delight to talk to you all. Thank you again to the great crew at MySpeaker. I hope that you found this introduction to AI very practical, pragmatic, invigorating and exciting, and that you'll get going on your AI journey. So please, if you enjoyed this talk, connect with me on LinkedIn. You can always look up Nikki Greenberg. It looks like me in a circle with, I think it's a bright yellow background. Or if you just scan the QR code, it goes straight to my LinkedIn profile. Let me know how you enjoyed the talk, what you're thinking about, what you're doing, and any AI tips that you might have. So thank you ever so much for your time and attention. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Nikki. Such an interesting and, to be honest, even a little bit of an overwhelming topic when talking about AI and the future of AI and how to really mold and build the future by enhancing human capabilities with the help of AI. And even though all of this may be a bit overwhelming, as Nikki said, there are some easy first steps to take. And one of this is to simply try the new features. And with this, I would like to tell all of you that we've actually reframed the whole UX design of MySpeaker Rhetoric. So I would like to invite all of you to, after the webinar, go ahead and try the new features that we have on the Rhetoric platform. They're freely available to you with the free trial. And the idea is that it's been built based on users' comments and improvement suggestions to make the journey toward impactful speaking so much more comfortable and easy. But before we do that, I'm going to share a QR code after André's webinar to make sure that you can all easily access the trial. But first, I would like to introduce you all to the chief architect behind the Rhetoric platform, and he will tell you how you can utilize impactful speech and speaking to improve your career, take your team to the next level, and just build your organization ready for the future. Please join me in welcoming André Noël Chaker. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Saris, Thank you, Nikki and Caspar, for those great presentations. And I have the great pleasure of being our third and last speaker in this Global Impact Summit. What I'd like to do today is talk about what impact is in the context of the workplace. And I want you to embark on a journey with me towards a speaking revolution that is happening in the workforce, and what is the place of AI as an example of what Nikki just told us, and an example of how AI can help us to become more impactful. I'd like to therefore define what impact is. I'd like also to talk to you about what are the problems we need to solve to become more impactful, and how AI can help us in doing this. And at the end, as a little bonus, I'd like to talk about the US election and the upcoming debates. My name is André Noël Chaker, and I'm the co-founder of MySpeaker and the chief architect at Rhetorich and its AI platform. We are so excited about the innovations that have come into the world of impactful speaking. I'll be publishing a book on this called Speak or Die, The Art and Science of Speaking in the Age of AI later this year. And the reason we were compelled to do this together with our team here is that there has been more research on speaking and impact in the past 10 years than in the past 100 years. You may remember these wonderful movies from 2013 and 2014, Ex Machina and Her, and these futuristic movies that told us something about how in the future robots will be able to speak as convincingly as humans, so convincingly that you will fall in love with robots. I don't think we're going to be there for some time, but definitely AI has the power of making us more impactful when we speak to each other. The OECD has released another report on the skills of the future where speaking is in the top 5. This is a skill that robots will not be able to take away from us. On the contrary, robots will be able to help us become more impactful. And that's what I want to show you today, how we can boost our human game to become more impactful. And to do this, I'd like to define what impact is. Now, impact starts ground zero with understanding one another. This has a lot to do with clarity and structure, and when we speak with clarity and good structure and understandable arguments, we are understandable to each other. Now, this doesn't mean that we need to be perfect. On the contrary, our humanity and our differences sometimes even drive more impact than it takes away. We don't want to speak perfectly to each other. We want to be perfectly ourselves when we speak to each other to be understood. I often use the example in my keynotes of my encounter with Arnold Schwarzenegger at the Nordic Business Forum. When I met him, it was quite interesting when he just looked at me in my eyes because I was like different than most people here in the Nordics, and he said, but who are you? And I said, yeah, I know, I don't look like the others. I don't really speak like everybody else around here, but it's believe it or not, I'm from Finland now. Even if I was born in Canada and my native tongue is French. And then he says, but why are you here? I said, well, actually they voted me Speaker of the Year last year in Finnish. Speaker of the Year, you in Finnish? And I said, yeah, I know it's hard to believe, but it's the truth. And then he says, André, tell me, when you speak Finnish, do you have an accent? And I said, yeah, actually I have a pretty strong accent. And then he looked at me, actually came closer and took me by the shoulder and said, André, your accent is your greatest advantage, yeah. And that was the insight, To be understood is critical. To be perfect in a certain language does not mean that you are being, that you are not being understood. Be proud of your color in the languages that you speak. As long as you're understood, ground zero impact is ensured. And then, on top of that, how do you become memorable? How do you make a lasting impression? How will your colleague remember what you told her, last week, last year, in the last decade. How do you make a lasting, impactful impression? Well, that's where the drivers of powerful speaking at work come in. The authenticity, the storytelling that we're going to be talking about a little bit later. How do you make this memorable? And then how do you create, on top of that, what we all want from each other? We all want to have a good and positive impact, which means that we will be so believable when we speak to each other that we will actually do something different than we otherwise would have done. To change the course of your company, to change the course of the ability to change in the right direction. How do you get people to work together and then listen to you and ultimately change the course of what the company is doing via the impactful communication, the impactful speaking? So doing things differently. So this is our impact pyramid. Ground zero, understanding. On top of that, becoming memorable when you speak. But then ultimately, what do you need to do to make people do things differently? So what are the challenges we face when we talk about impact? Well, the first thing is that impactful speaking is pretty scary. Actually speaking overall is the second scariest thing in the world, according to research. And you would think that the scariest thing for humans would be death and disease. But interestingly enough, it's not. It's snakes, believe it or not. Number one is snakes. Death doesn't even feature in the top 10, which is, it leads a lot of our stand-up comedians to take this statistic and say that, at a funeral, people would prefer to be, in the coffin than at the podium, which is pretty funny, obviously. But this is a true problem at work. So much of our competitive advantage is locked behind, the door of silence. Ed Catmull tells this story so many times about how Pixar was going bankrupt until they understood that they need to free people of their silence and get them to speak. But people are afraid of speaking for a variety of reasons. And unlocking this is a great source of added competitive advantage. So we need to fight the fear. The other issue that we need to understand is how important this is for future work life and the future of work in general. As I mentioned earlier, the OECD, McKinsey, and all HR Forecast and many other institutions tell us very clearly that this is a skill of the future. But is your organization ready for this? Because this is going to be a critical skill, not a nice to have soft skills, as we used to call them, but this is a hard skill for the future. And I would argue that it is a hard skill for today. But are we ready for this? Unfortunately, we're not. We have, Peter Thiel, the billionaire investor, just said this a few weeks ago, that Silicon Valley skill set will change from now on. The future belongs to those who speak with impact. Not so much those who can count and develop algorithms. As useful as that is, your success, your personal success, and the success of your company will correlate directly with your ability to have impact, right? And we're not ready for this because we don't invest in this. We don't invest in this in primary education enough. We don't invest in secondary education. Actually, most of the institutions of higher learning in the Nordics that we work with have actually disinvested from this and are looking for help from us to develop more impactful solutions using artificial intelligence, and we're happy to help. But we failed in doing this. And then ultimately, we don't have the time. We have a frenetic lifestyles that curtail the amount of time we have for upskilling. And therefore, artificial intelligence can help us develop this critical skill faster. So augmenting the ROI on each minute invested in upskilling our ability to have impact with each other will be critical. But more importantly, we need to understand that this is an important skill. We're part of a speaking revolution a speaking revolution where we need to tackle the fear, the perspectives of the future, the failures that we've had in the past in developing this, and also understanding of how we can make people learn faster using AI and other innovations. So this is what we want to do, and this is how AI can help to reassure, to create some psychological safety or around creating better impact in speaking. It seems that the research tells us that speaking to a robot and working with a robot, at least initially, creates more psychological safety. So that's an interesting insight from artificial intelligence, that people prefer to speak to robots, at least at the outset, in this context, than without. And then that we are able to reskill, repair the learning gaps or fix the learning gaps that we've had in the past concerning impactful communications, and then reprioritize. Make sure that this is at the center of our ability to compete in the future. Now, this is our innovation. Usually when I use this slide in universities, universities become very jealous. They take pictures of this, and already we've been able to inspire a lot of universities to create these kinds of platforms that are semi-automated learning platforms with analytical tools like the Oura Ring that will tell you, this is the situation with your body, but we can give you, an analysis of this is the situation with your impactful speaking in real time. Then a 24/7 open school with dynamic content that is there when you are able to put in the time to learn. And then ultimately a collaborative mechanism that allows humans and machines to have a dialogue and making, of course, the algorithms stronger and more relevant for humans. This is a critical innovation, and we're very happy to work together with Silo AI, a company now part of the AMD group in the US, where we are going to be developing an LLM dedicated to speaking. LLMs are great to develop new text and new images and new presentations, but artificial intelligence and robots will not replace you speaking, but AI can help you become more impactful. And this is the new innovation that we're going to be investing in over the next few years together with Silo. And we've developed a framework based on scientific research that identifies 6 key drivers to enhance and boost speech impact. It's credibility, likability, authenticity, persuasion, presence, and storytelling. And we have developed algorithms that can predict the quality of each one of these elements in your speaking and give you the tools to boost every one of them in a way that is relevant for the particular context you're speaking in. And now I'd like to talk to you about one example of the US election. We'll be publishing an article on this, and I thought it was fascinating. So coming up is the first debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and we took their recent speeches at their respective conventions to try to predict how these candidates will do. And it's quite interesting to look at their results on the Rhetorich platform. For Kamala Harris, we see that she does very well in terms of her technical prowess. Her technical scores are higher than Donald Trump's, and her technical strengths are her fluidity. She's one of the most fluid politicians actually out there. Her rhythm is actually, she pauses very well. Her word choice is rich and engaging. On the challenges, though, she's on a lower pace, lower volume, and perhaps a little bit of lower energy than her competitor. Her high pitch variability is also something that may be something that could be tweaked, and her pitch, just generally speaking, is higher. That used to be, back in the old days of Margaret Thatcher, a challenge for speakers to have high-pitched speakers seem to have less impact than low-pitched speakers, but that has changed. In the past 24 years, the higher pitch candidates, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and even George W. Bush have all had higher pitches than their competitors, and they won the popular vote in each one of those elections. So this is no longer an issue, but it still needs to be monitored. For Donald Trump, we see that on his technical scores are lower, but we look at his technical strengths are, well, low complexity. For him, it's probably a strength to speak to a wider audience. He's got very good pitch and variability. He's got good facial expressions and especially facial expression variability, as we all know. On the challenge, though, he's got filler words. Sometimes it serves him well, sometimes it doesn't, and there's certainly a room for cleaning that up. Now, he also speaks with higher volume and pace variability. That can be sometimes annoying, when he says, well, this is going to be great. And if he says it a little bit too many times, it might be annoying. And he scores low on openness in the Big Five, which is also a challenge and may be for some people a sign of low sophistication. But overall, the Big Six impact, both candidates are very strong in credibility and storytelling. Where there's a small difference is in the authenticity score. Kamala Harris is slightly behind. So if you know anybody on her team, please, send them to us. We'd love to be training Kamala for her upcoming debate to boost the sense of perceived authenticity. For likability, persuasion, and presence, they are a little bit low, both of them. So there would be work for impactful speaking there. So hey. We'll be publishing a press release and an article on this analysis of both candidates before the elections. So please reach out to us, reach out to me on LinkedIn or to our wonderful team here at Rhetorician, and go and try the platform. It's free, and I think you'll get a lot of insight from it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, André. And what an incredible insight. Shivers went through my body when you said that so much of our competitive advantage is locked behind silence. It's time to make sure that this isn't the case in your organization, nor is it the case in your career. And as the tide is also turning in the Silicon Valley, it's time to make sure that you're riding that wave too. You, your team, and your organization. So please, as mentioned before, we have the new UX design on the free trial. Give it a go. Try it. Go ahead and scan the QR code that you should be seeing on the screen right now. It'll take you to the free trial. Give it a go, and please let us know what you think. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this Global Impact seminar this morning. We'll be in contact with you soon, and we can already tease that the Global Impact Seminar Volume 2 is already in the makes. So be tuned or stay tuned, and we'll be sharing the link and invitation to that as well. With this, thank you so much on behalf of my speaker Rhetoric, for your time this morning, and wishing you all a wonderful week.